Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff I Never Told You, production by iHeartRadio.
Y'all. So in one of our last episodes or recent episodes with Joey, we discussed how social media platforms such as TikTok has had a huge influence in reclaiming or recreating terms to become more either gendered or just putting a new cutesy name on things. Like girl dinner. We specifically talked about girl whatever, girl bossing. That's kind of been a little before then, but the girl dinner, creating these gendered ideas, by the way, which is essentially snacking. But I think it's funny because I was like, yeah, this is girl dinner. I'm eating a charcuterie board for dinner. I do that often, I'm not going to lie. But one of the terms that we did bring up but really didn't get into was bedrotting, because I discovered it and what is that? That just sounds gross. So Anney, had you heard this term? What do you know of it?
I actually think I was ahead of you on this one. Because, and I want to say this, I want to be very clear, I am not on TikTok. So if I sound like an old person talking to the youths, I heard about concerns around it on what it meant on news sites like CNN. And then I saw a stand-up act where it was essentially it was on Stephen Colbert. Stephen Colbert brought out his writer, who was young, a woman, and was like, what is this? And she explained it. And then jokes ensue.
Right.
So I had heard about it. That is the context of how I heard about it.
I mean, this is right on par because I was a year behind. All of the articles that I've seen recently about bedrotting has been in 2023. So August of 2023. So I'm a little behind. I may have seen it and just bypass it because I'm like, I don't want this. What is this? I do this on a daily. Are you going to make fun of me? Are you going to call me out? I don't need this. On a monthly, not daily. Not daily, I swear to guys. I'm okay, I promise. But, so before we start, of course, we're talking, because it's my Monday Mini. And when it comes to Monday Minis that I do, we often talk about social media and how it's calling me out. And why is it necessary to call me out? I don't need you to tell me in terms of what's wrong with me, but yet you do, so I'm going to share it. Type of thing. Or we talk about mental health stuff, which is essentially the same difference. I'm like, why are we still talking about the things that are wrong with me? And everybody has to deal with it. So let's go. So this is my segment. So many users have been saying this specific term, bedrotting, which to me makes me picture the scene from Seven. You know, the one where they died of sloth and they're encrusted into the bed. And I'm like, ah!
Yeah. That's gross.
And that's the scene I have, y'all. It's still one of the most scary movies, but I can't watch it because Kevin Spacey's a dick. Yeah. And he ruined everything. But all of that to say that's what I pictured it. But it's really the idea of taking self-care to bed or spending a lot of time in bed by choice. And that word is by choice because we know sometimes people are bedridden and have situations where they have to be and they would rather not be or all of that. So please understand what I'm saying by choice. And here's what Forbes says. A bed rot is when you feel stress or anxiety or in some way feel overwrought with emotion and then end up spending a lengthy period of time in bed to rest or cope. And now we're not exactly talking about depression either. So what we're talking about in this whole conversation, saying pre depression or not quite depression. So we're going to put that in this caveat. So many have talked about this as a way of taking some time off to just relax and recharge. But there are a few who are a bit concerned by its effects, as you were talking about earlier, Anney. Here's a quote from a CBS News article written about it. They say, the trend has faced criticism from the wellness community as well as doctors, especially for people dealing with depression or anxiety. Quote, it can worsen overall health by increasing risk of obesity and cardiovascular disease, psychiatrist Dr. Reese said. Doctors say bedrotting can disrupt healthy sleep patterns, adding it's okay to slow down for a day once in a while if you're really exhausted. But if bedrotting becomes a barrier to living a full life or taking care of daily responsibilities, it might be a sign to seek help. If I'm finding myself needing more and more of this, Dr. Gautam said, is a good, reliable sign that there might be some other problems going on. And of course, there's some questions with that. Is it really needing a day off laying around in bed, or is it something more? Again, some TikTok users actually have contended that it's actually something known as languishing. And before we jump into that, I think like that's really important to understand when we're talking about laying around a lot versus a day or so off. I've definitely done this where I'm like, you know what, screw this. I'm gonna go get my computer. I'm gonna go get tucked into my bedroom and have the TV on there and work from here. Like, this is what I want today. This is all I need. I'll get some snacks. I'll get my water, and here we go. But I've definitely had moments where I'm like, I'm asleep till like 3 in the afternoon, because sleeping is a better resolution than to be up. Like that, you know, that's definitely like that danger zone where we have that conversation. I hate the term bed rotting, because just rotting is not a fun term to me. Mm-hmm. So I'm really surprised that they took that twist. Like, rotting is not the most, like, I would not affiliate that with self-care.
I mean, I feel like it's similar to what we talked about with Joey. There's something interesting that's happening where women especially are, I guess we're like pulling back the curtain on things that for a long time we pretended haven't been happening, or at least a lot of us have. And we're giving them these names that are either dramatic or kind of infantilizing, what have you. But I feel like bed rotting is sort of a case of exaggerating, maybe not, but like it's not, it doesn't sound pretty. It doesn't sound gendered. It doesn't sound nice. It's kind of the opposite of what we would normally attach to something women would do. So I think it's an example of that, of women being like, guess what? This kind of thing you see me as publicly behind the curtains. That's just what I kind of feel is going on here.
There's also some like virility in that conversation that this is them trying to get viral. So like, there's apparently like 75.5 million videos related to bed rotting. So I think this may be a part of that conversation, because also I got onto a different rabbit hole, which I want to come back to, with Gen Z terms that have like different meanings. I'm like, you're just rebranding. One of them, and I don't know if it's a joke or not, and I want to revisit this, is the ideal of a Gen Z dude dating a Gen X or an older millennial woman being called hag maxer.
Oh.
But then I see that, and it says, like, there's, you know, the warnings in Twitter like that says that it may be a 4chan joke that just exploded and people have latched onto.
Oh.
Yeah. So things like that kind of have happened, which I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. It's so like they took it from MILF to Cougar to this, that I'm like, they just rebranded, and I feel like it's not necessarily better.
Right. Yeah.
Just saying. Another video popped up on my feed where it says, because I had not been on the bed rotting. I just saw it once, and maybe because I didn't watch it, I moved on. But then the video came back and like, I'll tell you what this actually is. It's called languishing. So I went down this mental health rabbit hole, and here's what languishing is. An article from Real Simple titled, "What is Languishing?" They say, the American Psychology Association Dictionary of Psychology officially defines languishing as the condition of absence of mental health characterized by
ennui.
Thank you for the assistance. Apathy, listlessness, and a loss of interest in life. Again, so it's very close to depression. They move on. Languishing can also be described as a dulling of our emotions, says Dion Metzger, MD, a psychiatrist practicing in Atlanta. It's not sadness, but a lack of joy, she says. It's a neutral feeling of emptiness. American sociologist and psychologist Corey Keyes PhD, was the first to use the term languishing as a way to describe a person's mental well-being. Much of his research has approached mental health as a continuum, with the idea that the absence of mental illness does not automatically translate into the presence of mental health. More specifically, on one end of the spectrum, Keyes would describe someone who is mentally healthy as, quote, flourishing, while someone with an absence of mental health would be languishing. In his seminal 2002 paper on the mental health continuum, Keyes notes that the people who are languishing face a risk of a major depressive episode that is 2 times higher than those who are moderately mentally healthy and almost 6 times greater than those who are flourishing. So with that, it's not surprising that the pandemic has really impacted the growth of languishing as well. Many of us have come to this point either being anxious or completely ambiguous about what we are doing in the future. As the nysut.org puts it, quote, "You may not have symptoms of mental illness, but you're not functioning like you used to and worried about your mental health over time." Languishing is not clinical depression, but may dull your motivation, ability to focus, and makes you feel a sense of stagnation and emptiness, maybe even joylessness and aimlessness. It may be the prominent emotion of post-pandemic for many of us. And I think that's really kind of that conversation we've continued to have of that, like, we cannot get out of this funk. It's really hard for me as an individual. Of course, we're going to talk a little more into it in just a minute, but like it could be the added plus of like, this is my trauma response to begin with. So coming into languishing is just a natural state. Also, I am a more depressive individual. So therefore, this isn't like the normal state. So I'm like, I'm good compared to my depressive state. Everything's fine, y'all. Everything's just fine. Or perhaps it's just the newest way of understanding that midlife crisis, which I've talked about repeatedly because I'm like, do I have it? Is this what's happening? Is this like that level of like, okay, I'm not quite here because I can't afford what used to be the boomer solution of midlife crisis because I still have to keep working and I still have to keep pushing. I have to do these things and I'm not quite to that point of like having, adult kids or any of those things to focus on. That's a whole different conversation. The emptiness that is not quite depression, but just a sense of void and trying to fill it. So we're languishing instead of full-on midlife crisising. Yeah, I made that a verb. Anyway, there's another term that many have associated with this as well called functional freeze. So we know what the freeze reaction is in a trauma response. We've talked about that repeatedly in our trauma series. When we come back to revisit like trauma series or trauma reactions, we've talked about that as a thing because I've talked about that, but that's what I do. People think I'm being really calm and very good in a bad situation when in actuality I've just disassociated and frozen. I try not to tell people that though because they think I'm really professional when in actuality I have no idea what the hell is happening. But this is not exactly what we're talking about. I feel like functional freeze is similar to that. And again, kind of like how I was saying languishing may be like the normal spot for those who are major depressive disorder. I think functional freeze is kind of that level of like, okay, we're not quite in that trauma response, but it's just kind of like, yeah, this is protection. This is me protecting myself in a constant, but in a more like acceptable manner. We'll say it like that. So according to another Forbes article, functional freeze is, quote, a mental, physical, and emotional state where people find themselves immobilized by inertia, lacking the drive to pursue their goals or engage in activities that once brought them joy. And it goes on. Its onset mode can stem from various factors: stress, burnout, unresolved emotional issues, and a lack of clear direction in life. All contribute to perpetuate the sense of stagnation. As responsibilities mount, individuals may withdraw from the world, retreating into a state of numbness and apathy. The consequence of this state can be far-reaching, impacting multiple facets of an individual's life. Relationships may suffer as communication wanes and social interactions become superficial. Work or academic performances may also decline. Over time, this pattern of avoidance and disengagement can undermine self-worth and contribute to mental health challenges such as depression and anxiety. So it can also be a sign of things to come, such as depressive disorders or anxiety disorders or having an attack coming on. So a depressive attack or an anxiety attack, all those things. It could be one of those things. And I find this interesting because I just told you, Anney, that I'm like, yeah, I'm in this give up mode. So screw it. Like it's at the window where I hit a wall and I'm just like, I'm done. And I will tell you, and you know, we all have our moments. And thus far, the last 6 months has had a lot of like family emergencies. I have had 3 different family members, close family members, going into the hospital. They're all okay, but they've had some issues. I've had 2 funerals of very close relatives, and like things are happening. And I have kind of responded fairly well, to the point that I've just shaken it off and been like, yeah, okay, next type of situation, which is kind of not normal for me. But I have come to the point that I think I'm in that freeze mode or languishing mode, in which I'm just like, all right, things are happening. I can't crash and burn right now. So let me do it this way, to the point that I am not telling people about these incidents unless I have to. So I've told you many of these things. Now I'm telling our listeners because it affects my work. So I'm like, hey, I might have to do this. And I've had to be like, I can't be on this, just this, and this. And then my partner knows about it. And that's kind of it. Like, I haven't told any of my closest friends. I've just stopped talking until I have to explain myself and be like, I'm so sorry. It seems like I was ignoring you, or I was canceling, because I was canceling on people too. And I try to explain what's going on, but I just don't have the emotional strength, I guess, as I like just
bandwidth.
Yeah, like that. I'm like, I want to explain what's going on. Like, it just feels worse for me to explain what's going on. And it's a part of this thing, like both trauma response, all these things. And I know we've gone far away from that conversation about bedrotting, but we are talking about why are people are saying that they need these things, or that these are good things, or this is like revamping of these words, because we're back into the state of the languishing, of the functional freeze. I haven't stayed a day in the bed yet, but I do stay on the couch often until I have a reason to get up. Wow, that sounds real bad. Y'all, I'm okay, I swear. I'm not in danger zone. We're good. But in the sense of like, I do go work out. So I have told my workout buddies that I'm like, because I could do like Zumba and cardio gym. I love dancing. I love going out, moving around. So they feel like the closest friends I have right now, because I've seen them outside of you, who I see multiple times a week. Like, but like, they are people that they don't ask me things. You know what I mean? Like, we don't get into in-depth conversation. And as for me, who needs the in-depth conversation, which is this like oxymoron to me, just don't want to have it right now. So therefore, I can't have any conversation with you because I don't know how not to do that. Mm-hmm. And so all of these things are happening, or like when I do work or when I research, that I'm just like, yeah, okay. Do I have to go see people? Do I have to do things? And like, I'm forcing myself. This week has been a busy week. And I say busy weeks, I'm doing 2 things. 2 things outside of the norm. And it feels kind of overwhelming already. But like, there's this level of trying to figure all these out. I feel like most people know what I'm talking about. At the same time, they're like, Samantha, stop complaining. There are so many things that have been happening recently that I'm trying to figure out where to go. Some of the solutions, because we are coming back with solutions, obviously, that they have recommended are as follows. So one of the things that I've seen on several things was hiking and meditation in nature, and they have a specific Japanese word for this. I don't know how to say it, so I'm going to leave it alone. So I'm just going to describe it to you, but I'll credit this. And essentially, like, as it says, you go into the woods and actually concentrate and take a depth and like be a part of nature and like focusing on nature and all of that. When I used to, not a sponsor, use Calm a lot. Like, they have a walking meditation episode, and it's really lovely because it has the woman that I like, Tamara, which I talked about a long time ago. And like being able to like listen to your steps, listen to your breathing, hear this, and like having this moment of like, okay. And I would always just do one earphone while I'm walking, because I'm like, okay, so I can, hey, I need to be aware of nature. Someone's coming up behind me. I need to be ready. But all of those things, it was nice. So I was like, okay, that's a nice one. And then they talk about reconnecting to something that excites you or brings joy, which I kind of have a hard time with to begin with. Like, y'all, I've told you, I try to find hobbies because I'm like, that's what normal people do. I cannot figure out a hobby that I like, except for phone games, which does not seem healthy. Connect with people, which again, it's kind of hard to even get to that point because that means I have to explain myself, and there's so much to, like, at the same time, and you and I, you've talked about this recently, I feel like it's an inconvenience for other people to hear about my problems. It's not big enough for y'all to deal with, or it's passed by so long ago that everything's okay, so there's no need to bring it back up again. So those like moments. But I do know when I connect with people, it does feel better. It's just that beginning trying to get to that point. Unless it's a lot of people I don't know, and then I'm anxious and I'm like, I hate this. And then I feel like this is a big one, and I do feel like this is where TikTok helps me. Stupid TikTok. Acknowledge where you are. And if you're in a good place, acknowledging that it's okay to be in that spot. And to always remember, you're always going to be in a different mood. Like, it's not long lasting, hopefully. Eventually, and even if it is, there are usually moments of sparks that you see. You're not going to feel happy all the time. That's not a thing. You know, we know this. If you're a human, even with the best situations, there's still moments of, like, I think we talked with Eve, like we have a job and everything's great, but then the anxiety of like performing or trying to do something or being relevant or doing, hoping that we're impactful. So many things. And here's this from, and I thought it was really good. They were talking about the pandemic times and languishing. And they said and it's from forwardwellnesscounseling.com. Finding your flow, blocking out time, and setting small goals, all good ideas and interventions I often discuss with people in therapy. Doing one thing mindfully, which can elicit a flow state, is a particularly great practice. So much of what we identify as anxiety comes down to to-do lists and little problems that overwhelm us as there's too much to do and not enough time to do it. Learning to tune out that inner monologue that constantly drives us to do more is in fact the key to and the goal of mindfulness practice. And yet, while the larger context of the pandemic is acknowledged, the article's advice is directly squared at the reader, implying a personal responsibility to manage the symptoms while otherwise disregarding the cause. Over and against the impulse to self-discipline, already deeply ingrained in so many of us, I sometimes challenge my clients to consider, what if how you are coping right now is good enough? Could it be that languishing is simply a natural reaction to those prolonged stress and uncertainty? Maybe the response you are having is a valid one. Maybe a more appropriate strategy, so I'm guessing they're telling like, you don't have to do that mindfulness thing. Maybe a more appropriate strategy for coping with languishing would be allowing. Allow yourself to take a nap. Allow yourself to take things off your to-do list and opt out of a Zoom meeting. Allow yourself to continue to grieve the losses. This pandemic is not over. The vaccine that we were told would return life to normal has not allowed us to resume pre-pandemic activities yet. We are still wearing masks and limiting outings, and a lot of us are. I want to put that as an ask. Like, I don't know how long ago this article was written, so this is my little bit, Sam's bit. But just a reminder, COVID is still happening, and a lot of people are still masking and limiting their time out. Just as a reminder. And as we've talked to people recently, they are still getting COVID. So going on, we are still putting off travel plans and family reunions. So in this endless seventh inning stretch that is the pandemic, maybe we could all use a little more patience with ourselves to just be, with no expectation of doing more and doing better. Allow ourselves to feel whatever it is we are labeling this feeling, and knowing that this too shall pass. So I think, like, yes, it's kind of trying to find that place where you are specifically to this. And again, like I said, like letting it be, allowing it to be, calling it out, and then just kind of sitting in it. And it's okay for a suspended amount of time, y'all. Like, we're not saying forever. Don't do this forever because it's tiresome. It's tiresome. But I think there's a lot to be said in this conversation. Like, yes, bedrotting is I want to say funny term, but looking at the bigger picture of what it is also important. Again, like whatever the millions of videos that are out there, because there's millions, and then the millions of views that they've all had, is a good thing to talk about. It has really opened up a conversation that I think is really important. Not the self-care bit, because, you know, self-care is great. If what you need is a day that you just sit and watch your movie and just not worry about the world, then wonderful, you do you. And like, I'll do me, because that's what I want to do. But just a reminder that there are usually bigger pictures of what is going on and a bigger conversation of what needs to be said or what needs to be realized at the very point, like listening to your body.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. Thank you for going down my rabbit hole.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think it is important because so many of us feel like we don't have control anymore. So when I hear this, to me, it sounds like, well, what am I going to do? So I'll just do what I can to get to the next bit.
Right.
This is really funny to me because I've had kind of a hectic day and I have a lot to do, but I was like, maybe I'll get in bed and like read fan fiction. And to me, that's like the luxury of all luxuries.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Yeah, but it's funny to me. I didn't know you were talking about this day. I was like, oh my God.
And he's going to go bed rot, y'all.
I might the first time. Well, listeners, if you have any thoughts about this, please let us know. You can email us at stuffmediamomstuff@iheartmedia.com. You can find us on Twitter at momstuffpodcast or on Instagram and TikTok at Stuff One Never Told You. We also are on YouTube. We have a TeePublic store, and we have a book you can get wherever you get your books. Thanks, as always, to our super producer, Christina, our executive producer, Maya, and our contributor, Joey.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening. Stuff I Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, you can check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your favorite shows.